We have a very special guest on this episode about things that go bump in the night, things you might see, things he has seen. Well, stay tuned for some very interesting stories. You're listening to Our Different Take, episode 33. Hello there, and welcome to Our Different Take. My name is Brian, proud father of two awesome boys, Jedi podcaster. This is the way. And to my left is Scott. Welcome, Scott.
Hey, this is Scott. I'm from the Republic of Texas, or the soon-to-be Republic of Texas. I'm interested in conspiracy theories, the paranormal, the spiritual, alternative health, and most other things that the government tells us to ignore. Pay no attention to that image behind the curtains. Yes, and as a part of that interest that I have in the paranormal, I live in an area that has a lot of paranormal activity, and that brings up our guest for this evening. And I will let Cooper introduce himself and who he is, but he has some interesting experiences that we wanted to talk about tonight. Cooper.
So I live in Joshua, Texas, and there's just a lot of paranormal activity. It started from when I was 3 years old that I moved here, and since then it has just progressed. And basically in this area, you have nothing, loads of nothing, just like houses and like a few fast food restaurants. There is an area called Mountain Valley, which I moved to when I was 5 years old. First thing that happened there is I just felt like I was being watched. It was just, like persistently felt like I was being watched.
Sure. I think we've all had that experience at some point in time. You just feel like something is there, even if you can't necessarily see it, you can kind of feel it, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly what I'm talking about. It was a 2-story home. When you looked up the stairs, you could somewhat see people walking back and forth, or so I thought. Not just like 2 or 3 people. I mean, like a whole colony of people. Like it was just so many people that I would see walking back and forth, shadowy figures. And my first night in that home, I remember being terrified of my room. I was laying in bed, and as a 5-year-old, obviously you're going to be scared, but it made it even more scary that it felt like someone was laying beside me.
So you were 5 years old.
Yes.
And was this the first time that you'd encountered anything like this?
No.
Do you remember? It wasn't.
No. So I lived in a mobile home before I moved to Mountain Valley, and I lived in Cleburne. And I remember talking to people that my parents insist to this day were never there. And also remember walking into a room and just being like overwhelmed, and my eyes did this weird thing. It was like a flash of colors and just like this weird noise that I remember to this day. It was just like very traumatic. One day I was just laying in our living room, under the fan chilling, and the fan actually fell on top of me.
Yikes.
Jeez.
And I do remember saying that it was someone pushed it on me, that the fan stretched down or something. My parents never believed me. I was terrified of ceiling fans for years.
So you moved from Cleburne over to Mountain Valley.
Yes.
Which, for anybody who happens to know this area, there's like 2 or 3 mountain valleys. Did you live in the old one, or did you live in the one of the new ones?
It was the new one. It was not the old one. It was like 2005. So.
Okay. I actually used to live in Mountain Valley myself.
Nice area, but a lot of paranormal activity there.
My 2 daughters. I'm getting ahead of you here, but my 2 daughters had gone down to that lake in the back, and they were just down there one night. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and they had been just talking to each other about different things going on in their lives. And one of them said to the other, "Did you see that?" And they're like, "Yeah, I did see that." And they were convinced that something was chasing them, and they came running back to the house, which was about 3 blocks away, and they just booked it the whole time. They were convinced that there was something down there. First off, watching them, and then began to chase them. It's interesting that you brought up Mountain Valley.
Yeah, so I kind of know where that is. I believe you're talking about like the back lake
Mm-hmm.
by, there's like two houses, and then you have the lake view with the dock.
Yes, that's where they were.
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Hmm.
That area was so creepy.
Hmm.
I don't have any experiences, seeing anything there, but it was definitely creepy at night, and I didn't like going there.
Like you had a feeling that something was
Yeah,
there?
I see. I've always just I don't want to say I'm clairvoyant. I don't think that's the right word. Someone who can see things from the other side, but I definitely sense the things from the other side. Back to my story on Mountain Valley House.
All right.
So I lived by a construction site, actually. It was like where they had all of the equipment that they would use. It was in a giant storage container. You know, um, they had tons of tools and just lots of things that weren't safe for children.
Mm-hmm.
They did leave the container open. And so I remember going in there one day, and I was probably about 6 or 7 rods. What do they call them? You like put them on stairs, like stairwell rods.
Like a railing.
Yes, like rails,
Okay.
but like the rods that you put under them.
Okay.
So there was just, hundreds of those in there. One splintered and broke off the second I walked in there and actually sliced my arm.
Eesh.
And I swear that someone did that, but I don't know. I didn't see anything. It just felt like someone was there and they did that. And I ran home, and I remember telling my parents, and I ended up calling for my mom, and she didn't even answer me. And I was like, that's weird. So I went into the back room, and she was not there. My dad was not there, and they left a note that they had went out. So who did I talk to?
Hmm.
Hmm.
That was just weird. That's probably the weirdest occurrence I had there.
Hmm.
Definitely not scary, really. Uh,
Well, here's a question. When you say that you saw, figures and stuff walking back and forth, were you able to see like any clothing that they would be wearing? Are they from a certain period of time? Could you tell that?
so I do have multiple answers to that. So the people I would see walking upstairs, they were kind of just shadow figures. Like you could tell they were like maybe human, but you couldn't like make out any clothing or details. Like looking at your shadow, it was really blurry. On the other hand, I have seen other figures there on the stairwell. I used to sleep in the living room a lot because I was terrified of my own room, which was upstairs. And I do remember seeing this certain figure multiple times, and I was terrified of it. And it wore a white garb with a cone head, which you know what that
Hmm.
signifies, of course.
Right.
No, I
Uh,
don't. What does that signify?
KKK.
Oh, that kind of okay. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So I would see that kind of figure a lot, and it did like really terrify me because, I was too young to understand what that was. I didn't even know.
Well, that in Burleson, that there's quite a history of that.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. There was matter of fact, somebody had told me before uh, right before we moved here, all the way up into the mid '80s, I believe it was. There was a sign in our little town here that said the N word. Don't let the sun go down on your ass in Burleson. There's quite a history of of that kind of activity in town, and it's only been recently that has abated as Fort Worth has grown down this area. Um, that has gone away. But yeah, it was not that long ago that there was some pretty severe KKK activity in this area. That's interesting that you would say that.
Yeah, I would see that figure a lot. I mean, I remember laying in bed one night and it was like I couldn't move. So, sleep paralysis, I couldn't move. I was not on my back, I was on my side. And I remember seeing that figure and it was just sitting there. And then I would try to move and I couldn't move. And then it would just walk away up the stairs.
And then just disappear.
Yeah. So I'd wake up and then, of course, I'd go to my parents and they'd check it out. Nothing was there. But I do remember seeing that clear as day multiple times. I mean, that was truly terrifying, especially considering, what it was, what it stood for.
Did your parents ever see anything once you told them?
My mom had seen a few things. Obviously, she thought, oh, that was nothing. That was just my imagination, or that was just your imagination, that kind of thing. A very human response from a Christian family, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
is just ignorance is bliss. But, you know, shoot forward a few years, and then she's made a friend who frequently has paranormal encounters. Um, Her friend's daughter actually does see entities. And so after that, she's kind of, gotten better on it. And now listens to me and she's like always saying, make sure you pray if you see something or hear something.
Does she pray when she sees something and then it disappears?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Hmm.
It's a very touchy subject. So like sometimes an entity is strong enough to stay around while others are not. It's all based on, I guess, willpower. Like, are they really trying to make themselves known, or are they just, messing around? Because if it's a benevolent entity, then of course, saying the words of God is not going to really like offend it or anything.
Do you think it's possible to befriend like one of those entities where they like to come around more often?
Oh, 100%, yes.
Huh.
Has
Did
that happened to
did
you?
this happen?
I lived in a duplex and it was like the edge of Burleson, kind of in Joshua, but like, the edge. Um, it had a Burleson zip code. And I do remember this guy named Doug. He lived with us. It was just me and my mom at that point, and he was around all the time. He would always come in with McDonald's and he'd get that Big Mac, and it was just really gross. He was a sleazy dude. He would always talk to me and tell me these nasty stories or whatever. I really didn't like the guy. He was just like really rude, nasty kind of dude. He didn't like it when we went to church. Like he would always be mad. He stunk horribly. And this is before I had even watched, horror movies, because horror movies tell you, oh, if you hear this sound or smell this, it's demonic. I didn't know that, I was young. I was like 10. This guy stunk. He smelled like a raccoon that had just gotten into bacon. Like, it was horrible. Um, he didn't like us going to church. He was always rude. He didn't like it when I wasn't paying attention. He didn't like it when I didn't want to hear his stories. And eventually he did move out. I talked to my mom about it and I was like, I really didn't like Doug. And she was like, who?
Oh no.
I said, Doug, who lived with us, the past 6 months. And she was like, no one's lived with us.
Huh.
So I guess she kind of like chopped it up to just being an imaginary friend, but
Wow.
I really think that it was an entity with, foul intentions, because I'm not going to say what he said, but they were some pretty dirty, like nasty things that a child should not be told. Just a
You could
mean
audibly
old
hear him,
man.
like talk to you. Would you have conversations?
Yeah, I used to watch TV and he'd, sit there and comment on the TV. We would talk about, just random stuff like his Big Macs. He loved those. Weird.
And so you would have these conversations, and what was your mom doing when you were doing this?
See, I don't remember. I don't know if she was at work or what, because honestly, I don't remember her being around that much at that time. I don't know how I had conversations with this guy. That time is kind of a blur.
Huh.
It was a really bad time in my life, and the guy was just, it was weird. He was a retired farmer. I do know that.
Hmm.
And how old were you when this happened?
I was like 9 or 10. Yeah, and after that, I moved to Lakewood, Lakeside.
Okay.
It's like the other Mountain Valley.
Yeah, the one up front.
Yeah, it's right across from the QT.
Yeah.
So I moved there. That Doug guy disappeared completely. Not a lot of things happened in that house. It just had this, weird feeling most of the time. It was just an old house. Nothing really happened, but there were these woods. It was like a park, kind of. It was a lot of, trees and just a nice woody area. I always felt like I was being watched out there, not necessarily by anything, just like something was there. So I didn't like to spend a lot of time there. I'm actually going to go back to Mountain Valley House because the biggest thing is what happened there. So I was laying in bed and I did turn around because I felt someone laying behind me.
Hmm.
And I did see a disfigured man,
Jeez.
like rotten flesh, that kind of thing. I will never forget that. That was like, it's still in my head today. That is what I believed was following me in those woods. It just, I've always had this negative feeling when I talk about that, even a very gross feeling. When you walk into a room and it's just like, I need to leave,
Mm-hmm.
like a fight or flight kind of response.
Yeah.
So that guy was kind of following me for a long time. I've been in a lot of houses in this area. In all of them, I've encountered that man.
Really?
And that has followed me since my house in Mountain Valley.
So describe this. What this was? You said you've seen him several times in several places. Was this like a daily encounter, or was this once a month, once a year? How often did you see this guy? What did he look like?
So
And did you ever talk to him?
I have never interacted with him. I've been way too scared to, even to this day. The only thing, really, I haven't seen him that much. It's been, like the kind of thing where you see him once and then you don't want to go in there, so you kind of stay out for like a few months, and then you go back and nothing happens. And then something happens one day and it reminds you of him. And that's just how it kind of went. Not specifically any kind of time frame. It just happens.
And so it happens that you actually see him, or it happens that you kind of your memory is jogged and you kind of have that memory again.
Oh no, I've seen him multiple times. Every time that I think of him, something happens. Like, it's just like accepting it in your head lets him back in. It's kind of weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's hard to describe. It's just like, I don't know. It's just this man. He really is so disfigured and just gross. I really don't know how to describe that. It's just a very nasty, dark thing.
demonic in nature?
Yeah, very much so. I do know that I have some pictures. I have them right here with me because I do think about this a lot. It is very much so a part of my life.
You have pictures of this entity.
Yes. So I have a picture of when I did live in my original Mountain Valley house, and there is an object behind me. And you can just tell in my face, I'm really pale and just, out of it. And I'm young, you know? You don't see a young person look like that. But there is a very dark, like, spot behind me. And if you look a little closer, you can see eyes. A lot of people say, oh, no, it's just the lighting. I really do not think it is. So that was a big part of my life for a long time,
What do you think
up
the
until recently.
intentions of this entity was?
So I'm not particularly sure. He came along a lot when I was, struggling, when we were moving, when I was just like, kind of upset that we were moved, that we changed, whatever, just when I was vulnerable. So it seemed like it was kind of trying to take advantage of that. Like it was feeding off of my sadness, off of my anxiety,
Sure.
stuff like that. I do know that they feed off of fear. Demonic things do. I guess I'll tell you about what happened here where I'm living now. The first day we moved in, I laid in my bed and I hadn't in years felt like someone was laying beside me. And it literally felt like someone had, pressed their body to the bed. When you get in bed and it kind of pushes down and you can feel the next person next to you doing that. That's what it felt like. So I would feel someone laying beside me, and then I would feel an arm go around mine.
Oh, wow.
Which is just really terrifying.
Right.
And I do like to sleep with my door open, just because when it's closed, I feel like I don't have an escape route. And that stems from, that exact thing is when I felt like someone was laying beside me as a kid. So I would look out the door that night and I saw so many figures. And it wasn't like shadows. It was like just kind of translucent figures. They weren't completely transparent. They were definitely translucent. So like you could kind of see them, but also see through them. I thought it was my imagination. I really did. So I kind of just, dealt with it, went back to sleep. The third day we were living here, this didn't even happen to me. So my mom came in and she said, look what I just found. And I followed her. She had just taken a shower and there was handprints on the mirror. And they were elongated fingers, and you could kind of see that they had sharp nails, but not, I don't know if it was nails or their fingers were pointed, but it looked like someone had slammed their hands against the mirror. And my mom sent it to her paranormal friend, and she sent it to her daughter. And her daughter said, whatever that is evil. Get out. So that is the first thing that happened here with that entity.
Jeez.
The first thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
There has been a lot that has happened at this particular house involving that entity. I don't know, is there a specific timeline do you want me to go to?
No, just you said there's other things. Talk about some of the stuff that's happened.
So I got home from school one day, and I always walk home. That's always what I did. I was walking home. It was probably about 2017, 2018. Earlier that day, some girl approached me, like this weird goth girl that I've never spoken to in my entire life. And she said something creepy to me. She said, I know what you're going through. I've seen him too. And I had no clue what she was talking about. I was just like, okay, crazy girl, go away. And I get home that day, and the first thing I do every day after I would walk home is wash my hands. So I go into my bathroom and I start washing my hands, and so my mirror like points into my room. So when the door is open, you can see directly into my room. I did see a large, like, decrepit figure, and it was just like something demonic. Like, it wasn't human. Definitely was not human. It did have the long hands that I did see in the mirror. It was just really creepy. From that day on, I kind of devoted myself to the church. Like, I don't want to say I devoted myself, more so of just, I started going to church more because I didn't go for years. I just was not a church regular. After I started going, it kind of got worse. I was having a lot of sleep paralysis, and I was seeing a lot of, figures, a lot of entities, not all the same one, but the guy that I did see quite frequently, and I say guy because I've heard his voice on multiple occasions. I can't even describe the voice to you. It's just like, if you heard it, you would know it. Like a very dark, deep man voice, kind of old.
And it's an
It's
audible
just,
voice, not something that you're. I don't know. I guess that's what I'm asking. Audible voice.
yes, you definitely audible. You can hear him clear as day.
Has anybody else heard him, or is it just you?
So it was just me until 2019. So I hadn't, had any experiences. Nothing really happened here for a long time. The occasional, like, something fell out of the trash, something fell off a shelf, stuff that you can, just say, oh, that was just the house shifting or the wind,
Yeah.
common responses. I was actually on FaceTime with my best friend, and she was just talking to me, and we got on the subject of paranormal stuff because she had something happen to her, and I started telling her about this entity. From there, it just got really bad, really fast. So we were talking about him. I did hear him say, that was me. And she stopped me as I was speaking, and she said, did you hear that? And I was like, yeah. What did you hear? And she said, there was a man that said that was me. And I go, you heard that? And she goes, yeah. So I got kind of scared, and she was freaking out. Like, when you hear that kind of thing and someone else tells you that they heard it too, it validates it. And then it's like, this is real.
Right. Like,
I need to
I'm not just
leave.
imagining this. I'm not just crazy, kind of thing.
Right, right. So I just was like really scared after that happened. I ran really fast outside of my house, and we were still on FaceTime. So I said, you really heard that, right? She goes, I really heard that. You need to be outside of your house. I'm coming to pick you up. And she drove right over. We went and, just got dinner. And I went back to my house, and I was terrified to go back inside. And I haven't felt like that in a very long time.
So this entity knows it must know you and your name. And
Yes.
what do you think attracted this entity to you?
So I really kind of think that it might have been like, this is a very common, like, stupid response, but an Indian burial ground, I feel like that's where my house in Mountain Valley was built on, because, it's just like, that's a very common thing. It did happen, back in, the old days. They did, murder a lot of Native Americans. So it might have been an ancient native burial ground. And, maybe I disturbed the spirit. Maybe it's out for revenge. Who knows? It's just, I don't really know. That's just my
Sure.
best guess.
So, do you have any ideas as to why only certain people can see or hear these entities and others can't? You have any theories, hypotheses? I mean, you said your friend heard it. Uh,
So I kind of do. If you're raised where your parents tell you, yes, witches exist, ghosts exist, like a lot of Hispanic families, they do believe in the spiritual stuff. That's because that's how they were
mhm.
raised. When you are raised like that, you have knowledge of it. So you think about it. And that in itself kind of attracts them because they want to get, they want to be heard. They want people to know they exist. Um, and then you get into people with, third eyesight, which is what I call the sixth sense, which, a lot of other people say too. But it's your third eye chakra. Some people have, said they opened it doing some sort of yoga. I don't believe that. I believe it's something you're either born with or not born with.
See, now I had gone to a continuing education class. This has been, I guess, about 2018. I think is when I went to this, and it was alternative healing, alternative health. I don't know what. It was quantum touch. I don't know if you're familiar with quantum touch or not.
I'm
Okay,
not.
so it's kind of like Reiki. People may know what Reiki is. If you don't, it's
Definitely know what
okay. So
that
quantum
is. Yeah.
touch is very similar to Reiki. Um, but without the impartation. So for those people who don't know what Reiki is, it's like the a summoning of the life force, the prana, the chi, whatever you want to call it, um, and it uses that, it directs that. People use that, harness that to heal others,
Hmm.
and it's really kind of like a massage that you don't even touch people, or you don't have to touch. Some people touch, some people don't, and you just kind of manipulate the energy fields. Anyway, so I was at one of those continuing education classes for this, and there was a bunch of people that, these classes tend to attract people who are into that kind of thinking that you're talking about, Cooper. And one of them came up to me and she said, Scott, your third eye wants so badly to open.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I don't know if that's good or if that's bad. I don't know. And me at that time, I was kind of like, well, it'd be kind of cool if it was, but if it's not good, then I don't really want it to happen. So I didn't know what to do with what she said, but it was intriguing that she said it. She said, "Your third eye is telling me it wants to open." Uh, okay, so for whatever that means, I don't know if I was born with something like that or not. I do believe that that kind of stuff exists. I know my mom always used to talk about things like that, and
So you more than likely do have one. It's just sometimes they are blocked by stuff. I don't want to sound too crazy here.
You're not.
Sometimes they are blocked by things like, external factors, like you do believe, but you don't want to see it or you don't want to believe
uh-huh.
it. That is when you can definitely, open it by pressing on your forehead, where, the
Yes,
Hindu marking
yeah,
is. So that is your third eye
right. The
chakra.
dot.
Yeah, the dot. Um, I don't know their culture enough to say this. Based on my understanding, it is to block that chakra because that's part of the Hindu belief. So you definitely need to either decide to open it. Once you open it, it cannot be closed.
I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
There, you can read accounts. There is a guy in China who has had his third eye chakra open for years now, and he said basically in his account that he would walk around the city, and sometimes he would talk to someone and they would tell him how they died and he would have to help them. But then there would be other people that he would talk to and they would
Hmm.
lie. They would say, "Oh, I was hit by a train. I really need you to, go here and pick up this key that I left. And I want you to give it to my granddaughter," or something like that. But then he would get there, and instead of the key being there would be something else. And it would be the spirit trying to get him killed.
That's not very nice.
Yeah. So it's a very like sketchy thing. I wouldn't personally do it. I've thought about it, and then the more I read about it, the more I was like, maybe it's better just to keep it shut.
Hmm.
Are people born with it open?
Yeah, you can be.
I was talking to another friend of mine who I hope to get on this program soon because she's got some interesting stories to tell as well. But she has a friend that lives over in well, I won't give away where it is because it's a small town, but it's in West Texas, and this friend can in her words can see dead people, right? Can see spirits, and the spirits will communicate with her. And she said it's quite annoying. So a lot of people say that they want this kind of thing to happen, that it would be really cool. Said, but these spirits are everywhere and they will not shut up. They will not stop talking to you.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that. That was actually one of the things that was in the account from the Chinese man is he said that kind of the voices never stop because they will seek you out because if you're interacting with others, it's going to bring others to you because they're going to feel that energy and it's going to be an opening for them to get into this realm.
I mean, I guess that would kind of make sense. We're social beings, and if these things are human or were human or uh, I mean
Want
want
to
to
be
be, yeah,
human.
okay,
That's a big
then
factor.
they would seek out those who can. I mean, again, we're social beings, so if you're in isolation, you're going to want to be heard, you're going to want to be felt, and if nobody can see or feel you, then you're going to want to go to those who can. So it makes sense. I've not personally experienced it, so I don't know. But it, from a head point, from a logical standpoint, it makes sense. And I again, I know enough people personally who have seen, talked to, experienced conversations with these entities, that I know, as far as I can believe, I know that this stuff's not in the realm of crazy people. I believe that it's legitimate. I don't know exactly what it is or how it works or why it works, but I do believe that it's legitimate, and I believe that it bears questioning as to what are these things.
Yeah. So like kind of what you're saying, everything is theoretical. Most things are based on truth somewhere in it through movies or whatever, movies, books, um, paranormal, ghost hunter, TV shows. Like, there is some truth to like some of those things. The one I think has nailed it is actually called Insidious. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
No. Oh, you have, Brian.
So,
Yeah,
so,
I have. Yeah, and I agree with like the ghost hunters and stuff like that. I feel like that's purely like 98%
yeah,
sensationalism, honestly.
but basically, Insidious is actually one of my favorite movies, simply because of the fact that it is very realistic, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the things I have experienced personally, which is, like something's in another realm, but it's not here. And they are trying to get through. Now, I haven't had some crazy possession. I've never been possessed, but it's definitely been to the point where I felt like that's what it was trying to do. In 2020, I think I mentioned this earlier. I don't know if I did or not. Early 2020, I got really sick, and I went to specialists. I went to doctors, all this crazy stuff. I had scans done. They looked at my gut. They were looking for everything they could think of and could not get a diagnosis. And I ended up just starting to pray a lot, and I started going to church again, and I got better. And it was really weird, but at church, I actually met someone, and they told me that there are demons that try to get to you once you stray from the church, because then you are kind of not out of the hands of God, but you are a possibility for them to convert. Yes,
Like an easy
easy
target.
target for them. And so they will start messing with you. Though there are ones that can make you sick because they constantly follow you, and they feed off of that feeling. And they will take, your life force. They want it. They want so desperately to be human that they will, interact with your life. They will do everything they can. But once you set foot in a church, then it all changes. And they will attack you harder at first, but it does get better. And it has. I have not had any encounters since, that happened pretty much.
I'm a firm believer in the idea that the mind and the body and the spirit are integrally connected, and that if your spirit is wonky, if you're dabbling with things you ought not be dabbling with, if you meditate on things that you ought not be meditating on, it can result in physical illness. And that a lot of times that physical illness, the medical doctors will find nothing there because there's medically nothing wrong with you, but that the spirit itself can induce physical ailments, physical sicknesses, and
Right.
likewise emotionally, you can get mental diseases simply from meditating on negativity, on depressing things, on somebody who finds I don't know. You saw some studies in psychology happen around like 9/11, where people were just thinking about these horrible things that had happened, and they just got mentally ill, and they did some experiments on that to prove that simply meditating on negative things will actually cause mental disturbances. And so I definitely believe that stuff is legitimate. Um, it's very very much connected, and so it makes sense again what you're saying, that if you kind of get your head meditating on the positive things, on the godly things, the good things, then you kind of take that ammunition away from the entities that would try to take you down that negative path.
Right. You saying that reminded me, and it actually did open my eyes, kind of, and make sense. Um, that did happen right around March 2020. So that was right when I was supposed to start college. The day I was supposed to start college was actually the day that everything shut down because of COVID-19. So
Wow.
I was like super depressed because they were like, online school has to happen now. We're shutting down. And I just was like, I can't do that, so I didn't. I was very depressed. And I think something took advantage of that for sure.
Interesting. And you wonder, I wonder, if you look at the number of people who are um, attempting or considering suicide over the last year, uh, I wonder how much of that has to do with just this air of negativity that's been going around, and if people tend to just focus on that, um, what's it do to your mind? I mean, it brings on a hopelessness that I think can become a mental disturbance. I think it can become a chemical imbalance in and of itself. Nothing necessarily physical that causes that. It's just the mental um, energy that goes into that. And I'm not trying to say that everything that's a mental illness is because of this. Nobody needs to hear me say that, but I am saying that I do believe that it can be brought on in many instances from that kind of activity, from the meditations of our mind.
So last year I did go on a trip with my friends. We were going to Colorado in September, and everyone was telling me to stay. Everyone said it was a bad idea. They just had a bad feeling about it. The day before I left, I did have this nightmare where I did wake up and my lower back was hurting. So I went to my bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I had 5 scratches on my back. Of course, I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, maybe I laid weird or whatever. The first day we got there, we actually ended up getting into a car wreck. And my life was like barely saved. Like I could have died if the car had been hit like, 4 inches closer. It was just a very eye-opening thing. And I was in a very bad space just because I was bedridden and couldn't move. There was just like, it was just a weird thing that this happens so often. I had sleep paralysis every night, every day, every night for a few months. And this is just the kind of thing that, sleep paralysis, you hear about it, you think it happens like once or twice, maybe in a year, maybe. It was happening every day, every single day. And I would wake up, I couldn't move. Sometimes it would just be me freaking out. Other times I would see this entity. This was not the same man. It was some other type of person, maybe. So I didn't see clear physical features. It was just like a human type form that was smiling at me and laughing and pointing. And it was humiliating, like it just wanted me to feel bad. I did ended up telling him to leave. It did not do anything. So I, started reading the Bible, started studying up, and I was like, okay, I have power over demons if this is a demon. And I tried to use that as my, selling point to the demon or potential demon. I was like, I have the Lord, please leave me alone. It did not work. I continued to have these negative thoughts. I continued to have sleep paralysis. And this is in broad daylight. You don't hear people talking about things that happen in broad daylight very often. This was in broad daylight. I was having sleep paralysis, falling asleep, and seeing this man laugh at me. Like, it was
Hmm.
terrifying. I did end up like going to, I don't know how to say this other than I prayed to a family member, like to speak to a family member who had passed. And I said, "What should I do?" And I remember that night that I got this really warm feeling behind me while I was laying in bed. And I felt someone laying beside me, but it wasn't like scary. It was like warm and like kind. And I had the best sleep I had ever had in a long time. It never happened again. It was just a weird
Some
experience.
faiths, some churches call that the communion of the saints. So
See, I've never
so
heard that.
they I think Catholicism and I think the Anglican Church believes that. I mean, you hear people like kind of praying to Saint Christopher or Saint Thomas or what have you, and the thought process, as I understand it. Now, somebody may correct me and tell me I'm wrong on this, but as I understand it, is that the spirits of those who've gone before are still there because the spirit never dies. And so you're basically not necessarily praying to them like you would be praying to God, but that you're talking to a spirit just like you might be talking to that ghost that's there, except it's the spirit of whomever, somebody who's a relative who's gone before you. And that person then intercedes on your behalf with a prayer of their own because they are um, what's the word, sanctified, because they're already with God, so they can kind of intercede for you, and that may be kind of what you're talking about.
It kind of does sound like that. It makes a lot of sense.
Have you ever checked your family history, way back to see if there was something back there that, well, where all these entities like coming to you and you see them all the time? Is there history there?
So, yes and no. I haven't, gone back and done like an ancestry thing or anything like that, some sort of DNA test. Um, but I have heard things about my family. Like my dad said his grandfather was actually a Cherokee chieftain. There is that, maybe something happened then. Maybe he was like around a priest and something happened. Maybe someone in my family was cursed, who knows? But it is definitely a potential factor.
I've talked to a lot of people who have seen as children some of the things that you're talking about, and then as they get older, they see less and less and less of it to the point where when they become adults, it just doesn't even happen anymore. Have you uh, uh, that gel with you? Have you had any experience with that? Anybody that you've talked to that has also seen these things? I mean,
Not really. Probably because, I've always kind of like kept it on the download that I believed in this stuff, that I see these things. A lot of people I talk to have always seen them, not so much as a kid, and then it just kind of dwindled down. That is a very common occurrence, though, because as a child, you are very innocent and susceptible to these things. So they do, interact with you because they're trying to get through. It's what they do.
I thought it was interesting what you had said earlier that kind of simply believing in them almost invites them. And children, in a lot of cases, for lack of a better expression, don't know any better than to believe in
Yeah.
something. And, they haven't been necessarily told over and over and over again that doesn't exist. Or maybe they eventually do get told that. Like maybe a lot of people see this kind of stuff, but then, their parents come out, oh, there's nothing there, honey, there's nothing there. And so they begin to say, oh, I'm making all this stuff up in my head. And then that belief kind of goes away. And then as that belief goes away, then maybe those entities are no longer feel welcomed?
It's not so much, I don't think that it's that they don't feel welcomed. I think it's just that it's harder to bring yourself into someone's eyes when they're just going to say, oh, that object fell, it must have been the wind, that kind of thing. There's no point in them doing that. And it does take a lot out of them, I believe, because to make something move in a different realm, imagine how much energy that takes from someone. So telling them not to believe in it or just saying, oh, there's nothing there, I think that does work. Because maybe, I don't know if it's that the parent goes in and they say, oh, there's nothing there, and they did see something, but they don't want their child to know that. Or if it's they can't see them because they've hidden themselves because they only want to interact with the child. Or if it's something like, only the child can see them because they don't have enough energy to be seen by the adult.
So I'm intrigued by your example earlier from where your friend was on FaceTime with you, and she actually heard the same thing that you heard, and I'm wondering how that plays into everything that you've discussed tonight.
So technology is kind of like one of those weird things where certain frequencies can pick it up, as seen on TV. It's a weird subject because sometimes you can, and I have stories about this too. You're on the phone and you're talking to someone and it cuts out, and you get that feedback. It sometimes could be an entity because sometimes that frequency hits just right and you can hear them talking. That's kind of the thing that I think happened. I think maybe the entity was aware of that and made use of it, or maybe it was an accident entirely and it just happened to pick up his voice.
I'm wondering if we would try to find that frequency. I mean, if we could at will communicate with them.
I've definitely tried that. I mean, so my ears are sensitive. I don't have tinnitus, but if you listen really close, you can hear a ringing, and it's like the silence. They have a word for it, but I can't remember what it's called. Basically that. I've tried tuning, and I have heard some things. I really have. Sometimes you hear weird things. Sometimes it's just like, honey, are you home? Weird things. So I do believe that you can tune into that frequency. I just think it's very hard to do so.
Especially not knowing what frequency it is.
Exactly. If you have the equipment, I don't know if this is true. Don't take my word for it because I've never used it. I've read a lot about EMP stuff, and of course you see that on TV. Whether or not it works is a different question. But I would like to do that. That sounds very interesting. I'm not terrified of ghosts at all. That just stems from my belief that, God will protect me.
Have you had any experiences? I mean, it sounds like most of the stuff that you've dealt with have been very negative experiences. Have you ever had any that have not been, have been almost like a friendly ghost?
Yes, I have. So this one actually happened in Crowley. I had just moved into the house, and of course, everyone was telling me, they were like, that house is haunted. A man died in there. I did ask my parents about it, and of course, you have to disclose it when you get a house or buy a house. They have to disclose that someone died there. The previous owner's husband actually did die in there. And at first, I really thought it was going to be a very malevolent spirit because, just the things that happened the first few weeks that we moved in there. I had chosen a room, and when I turned on the shower, it did shoot out like sewage. Yeah. So I was like, this is a sign, this is a malevolent spirit. I need to get out of here. It turns out that in that room, he did pass away, have a heart attack in the closet. It was just really creepy. The room had bad vibes. I ended up choosing another room, and that became like a craft storage room that nobody ever went into because everyone got that vibe, not just me. There was a hole in the ceiling of the closet, and if you look up it long enough, you might see something. I did see an eye peering at me one time, but it ended up not being that because multiple times I would see something walk past at the corner of my eye, and I didn't have any bad things happen there at that house because, I think he was a friendly spirit. The people of the neighborhood, of course, told me, they were like, oh yeah, as long as you're there, he's going to protect you. As long as you do everything, as long as you're a good person, he's going to be a good person to you. It's just animals obviously didn't like him because he was a spirit. And he was very positive. I didn't ever have any interactions with him, talking with him or anything. I do remember one time I was looking for my remote, which had completely disappeared. And I said, I don't know what I did with that remote. And I said it out loud. And all of a sudden it was just behind me. And it was just, I don't know if this is true or not. I think he put it there. So I do think that was a friendly spirit.
You mentioned something a minute ago that piqued my interest. So you said something about animals not liking these spirits. Do you have animals, or have you?
So I have had animals. The last time I had an actual animal that was, an actual pet, not just a frog, was when I lived in Mountain Valley and at the duplex I talked about earlier, where that man Doug, I thought, lived with us. So I did have a dog, and he didn't like coming inside. Never knew why. And he did bark a lot at random things. Like, you go outside and there was nothing there. And there was this particular tree that he used to bark at, and I really didn't know why. It makes sense that there might have been an entity there because I remember going back behind that tree one time and hearing someone whisper, and it was like you couldn't tell what they were saying, but it was definitely a whisper, like someone spoke to you very far away in a whisper. My dog would always bark at that tree, would never come inside, didn't know why.
Interesting. I mean, it's weird enough to me that dogs can pick up a scent 2-3 days after somebody's been somewhere. Maybe they have some sort of other abilities that they can see or smell or things.
Well, they also don't see certain colors, stuff like that. Their eyes are very different from ours, so I think that also plays a part.
Some dogs can pick up dimes and nickels too, much more than a cent.
I need one of those.
Yeah, that's great.
Just saying.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
I don't know if that was intended to be a pun or not, but that was funny.
I'm not sure when that stuff comes out of my mouth. Honestly, I don't know.
Well, that's interesting. There are so many other, like I said, so many other people who have stories, especially in this part of the state. I don't know why it's so prevalent here, but it's all the Burleson, Crowley, Joshua area is.
Someone told me a few years ago that this is the spiritual hub of Texas. I don't know why it would be, because there's nothing here. But I don't know, maybe something in the past happened. Maybe there was, something back in colonial days. Maybe something happened then. Who knows?
There's got to be something, I would think.
There's no reason they would choose this just randomly.
I'd heard, we did a program, or I guess it was before I was on there, but Brian, you and Matt did a program, I think, on Bigfoot. And supposedly a lot of sightings down in this area of Bigfoot, Alvarado area. which surprises me because I mean I don't know where Bigfoot would hide in Alvarado, uh, but supposedly that was a thing here as well, um, and maybe something along those lines. Maybe it was an entity that people saw, a spiritual entity, not an actual being, which I guess would make the whole sightings of Bigfoot anywhere more interesting, palatable, believable. I guess if people are seeing ghosts, not an actual beast, which would be why a you never see a Bigfoot carcass.
So I do
Okay,
have an answer, kind of. So I don't know if you know where this is. It's in Cleburne. It's called Old Foamy Road.
I haven't.
I'm sure you've heard of it. That is a shocker to me. I mean, everyone's heard of it. There's
Old Foamy
Old
Road?
Foamy Road. It's this really narrow road that is kind of like by a riverbed. So when it rains, it foams and it covers the entire road. It's very dangerous.
Huh.
So they used to use that in like the olden days, meaning like, early 1900s, maybe 1800s. There used to be KKK meetings there. And then there was a house there that was used for satanic activities.
Huh.
And it's believed that, they summoned the goat man, which I think could be exactly what you're talking about. Maybe they saw the goat man and they thought it was Bigfoot. A goat man is like a demonic entity for sure. It is something that was created by Satan, to cause fear. That road is like very known for meth head activities. So you can't believe everything you hear
There's
there.
plenty of that going on in this area too. This is
Yeah.
like little Alabama here. No offense to the people of
Yeah,
Alabama,
no
but
kidding.
Oh, jeez.
They there's just a lot of things. And I did go down the road once while it was, it's like right after a rainstorm. What year was that? It was back, I don't remember which year it was. There was like a lot of rainstorms happening and a lot of flooding in the area. Um, that was the first year I went to Old Foamy. And it was during the daytime. The road had actually broken, like literally broken. Gravel or pavement, I'm trying to remember which is which. What are country roads made out of? Gravel or
usually
pavement?
like a chip seal out here.
I think that's probably what it was then. It was like, broken with potholes,
Mm-hmm.
and half the road was off the river, and it was just like we couldn't get across. So we had to do this U and turn around. And as we were doing that, I saw a man.
Huh.
I don't know if it was a meth head or an entity, but it was terrifying, to see a man out there
Mm-hmm.
while you're alone. So I told my mom about it, and she was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh yeah, there's nothing there." So we kept driving, and then we were going over the hill, which was like right before you get out of there. And she says, "Oh my God, I just saw someone." I said, I told you there was someone there."
Huh.
And we got this really bad feeling. Thank God we were close to getting out of there, because right as we left, of course, someone runs out behind us
Hmm.
into the road. And we had just turned onto the highway. Yeah, that was terrifying. So I think either that was a meth head or, a spirit, because I've heard a lot of stories about that area and how if you go out there at night and you turn off your headlights and turn off your car, the goat man will appear and he'll shake your car.
Interesting. Well, that gives me something to start researching on.
I have a lot of friends who have told me similar stories. Some of them call it the Witch Road because of the way, or Witch's Cove, that's what they call it. Witch's Cove, because of the way the trees look, and they all kind of hook together at the top
Hmm.
and make it look like a cavern. There's a lot of stuff there. Definitely
Interesting.
ask people about it. You can
Uh,
even,
I'm gonna find out where this place is now. I'm definitely gonna check it out.
it's very interesting. You can look it up on Google and find a lot of stories about it, actually. I think it was part of, if not one of the topmost
Huh.
haunted areas in Texas, along with the Fort Worth Stockyards and Stags. Stags, I do have a story about. Fort Worth Stockyards, can't get in there. I wish.
Why can't you get in there?
So they're guarded 24/7
Oh.
just because it is closed down. And, it's dangerous to the public. And since it is, online is like one of the most haunted areas, they have it closed off. Stacks, on the other hand, I don't know if you know what that is. So they're like grain silos that are abandoned in Fort Worth. You've probably seen them.
Yeah.
You know where the
off,
rig is?
I-35.
Yeah. So it's kind of around there, a little bit farther. There is those abandoned grain silos. And you can go up there. It's just very dangerous. People all the time my age would say, "Oh, I'm going to climb Stacks this weekend," and then they'd never make it. There was a girl who died there around 2016 or 2017.
Oh my goodness.
She actually fell into the grain silo and suffocated. There's a lot of stuff that's happened there.
In Burleson, they have those ghost tours. Had a friend who used to work at it's Pandan Thai now. Used to be Harry's Hot Dogs.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
And before that, I don't remember what it was, but she tells the story that she used to see weird stuff in there. Like one time, like she came in and there was like flour, just like not like flowers, but like cooking flour that was like all over the floor, and then like there'd be footprints in it, but it was like after hours, and there was like nobody there. So it's like these footprints just kind of like appeared in the flour, and that's just right across the street from Babes. You said you'd heard something about Babes being haunted, but it's right across the street. Supposedly,
I've experienced stuff at Babe. I have so many experiences in this area just because I am kind of susceptible to it. I don't see them very often. It's more of sensing. I walked into, so it is above
Yes.
Babes. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Like there used to be a store up there. So I did walk up there and I just, got bad vibes. I did not like it there. I never liked eating at Babes because the bathrooms, I did see someone crying in there one time and they didn't look human to me. And as a kid, that's terrifying to you. So I didn't go there very often, but I did have this really bad feeling there. And people have told me a lot of stories about going up there and seeing a man, holding a freaking knife. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely not going. There's been people that have committed suicide on those train tracks right there, which obviously adds to the spiritual presence there. Pandan Thai, I can tell you something about that place. They have the upper floor. It's just got this weird feel to it. There's a back room where they store their extra stuff like tables, tablecloths. I let myself in. Of course I did. Don't tell them.
And
they have cameras back there that aren't activated and they're turned towards the wall. And I thought that was kind of odd. And when I walked in there, the caution sign that you put up for a spill, it fell. And I just took that as a sign that I should probably get out of there.
Thank you so much for listening this week. We are now heard in over 58 bus stops.
It's crazy. There's no other podcast.
We went from being heard in 75 galaxies to 58 bus stops. I don't even know how that happened. So we can't say how thankful we are to
I'm not sure.
Greyhound. And we love all of our transient listeners. Please call our voicemail line at 970-343-4594 to submit questions or comments, or go to ourdifferenttake.com and our Facebook group page called ODT Nation. Follow us on Instagram at Our Different Take. And I tell you what, you people on Instagram are like the kings and queens of spam. Cut it out. Dude, just stop. I mean, okay, yeah, that's enough of that. Anyway, please send us your comments, suggestions, complaints, or questions, or spam to show@ourdifferenttake.com. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and look for us wherever you get your podcast from. I like Spotify. We also have a YouTube channel called Our Different Take. Please subscribe and click on the bell so you will be alerted when a new podcast is released. Just remember, question everything. Take care.
Peace.
Is mine too loud?
No.
There's some good Indian music though.
Oh, the man got to you.
There's a song called Chaya Chaya.
Sounds like it's about like tea or something.
It's about a train.
Oh, crap. No.
About a train. It's low-key screamo.
And then,
Wait a minute, I listened to that a couple of times.
hey, have you heard any of our other podcasts?
So I still remember how to say, how much do I owe you?
Mujiapko Kinadinahe?
Mujhe aapko kitna dina hai? And they're like, what are you trying to say to me? That dude was weird.